American society. Who is this man and who are his handlers? Walid Shoebat is on the telephone to delve deeply into the pro-Islamic Obama administration and the rapid spread of Islam throughout the world, including Western nations. His website is Shoebat.com, SHOEBAT.com. Walid, welcome back to True News.
You bet. Thank you for having me here.
Yes, sir. He's the mysterious man in the White House.
Well, it's either Obama is Islamist or Obama is sympathetic to Islamists or Obama is a liberal revolutionary socialist. But no matter how you look at it, spreading the wealth is an Islamic concept. To criticize the Crusaders, as he did lately, is very much an Islamic concept. It's not wrong to criticize the Crusaders at some point because every military might had an Abu Ghraib. The Crusaders had an Abu Ghraib in Jerusalem. We all know that. The reason he picks on these things all the time is because that's an Islamic mentality that always picks on the Crusaders so you can be embarrassed of the heritage that you have. And so he continually attacks the Christian heritage by any means. He takes advantage of the situation in ISIS or the situation in the Middle East or any situation to attack Christianity continually. He promotes Islam because he loves Islam. His words is what he means. He goes to Egypt before. He starts an Islamic revolution in Egypt, and he still stands with the Muslim Brotherhood and still advances the Muslim Brotherhood. The State Department still has the position of supporting the Muslim Brotherhood over a potential ally like Sisi who's gone to Russia. The United States is losing allies and not winning and gaining allies. There is a compromise with Egypt. Egypt is a secular country. Egypt can and had bought weapons from the U.S. It worked with the U.S. Mubarak worked with the U.S. He had Egypt very much with al-infitah, what they call the openness of Egypt, very much Western, try to adapt Western system and mimic Western ideas. And Egypt flourished under Hosni Mubarak. And so, yes, we have problems in Egypt, and yes, we have problems with dictators here and there, but it's not to the magnitude as what we have now. Now we have ISIS. We're going to look back in the days and say, oh, the good old days of Hosni Mubarak, and even the good old days of Saddam Hussein. We declared war on Saddam Hussein. Now we look back in Iraq and we say, the good old days, the days of Saddam Hussein. So the world is changing, and alliances are building that are very anti-West, anti-Christian, and anti-U.S. Even if you go to Japan, you have Shinzo Abe, who's really looking back towards the kamikaze era, towards back to Nanking. He's glorifying warrior martyrs. And you go to Turkey, you find Erdogan rising. And you go to North Africa, Islamic fundamentalism is rising. And you go to ISIS, and you say ISIS is a problem. But we don't realize that there is Ansar Bayt al-Maqdis joined ISIS and gave allegiance to al-Baghdadi in the Sinai Peninsula, which is wreaking havoc in Egypt. And we're not supporting Egypt for fighting its problem with terrorism. And we are fighting against Bashar al-Assad. What's the problem with Bashar al-Assad? Okay, he is an Iranian ally, but nevertheless, he is very easily maintained by the State of Israel. And the Christians in Syria live in peace and harmony. There is even Jews who live in Syria and go to their synagogues peacefully under Bashar al-Assad. And so we tell Bashar al-Assad that you have to abdict your throne. You have to leave. Then we realize, wait a minute here, the FSA, the Free Syrian Army that we supported, turns out to be very ISIS-like minded. And we say, well, wait a minute, we need to bomb these guys over there called ISIS, and now maybe Bashar al-Assad is not an enemy after all. And we ask Bashar al-Assad, maybe you should be hopeful to join our coalition. And he says, why should I join a coalition that supports terrorists? And he's right. because the coalition supports the Free Syrian Army, a group of terrorists who want to destroy Syria, who want to establish an Islamic caliphate just like ISIS. Of course, they're not as hot as ISIS. And so the king of Jordan is much wiser than all, and he says, well, no, I'm going to rate the Islamic problem as the American will rate the La Victoria salsa. There is extra hot, hot, and mild. So, he looks at ISIS as extra hot. He looks at some prisoners like al-Maqdisi, who's hot, and of ISIS, and he releases him, has him condemn ISIS, and makes factions within ISIS, and begins to fight the war as it's supposed to be fought by the U.S., and begins to hang terrorists instead of releasing terrorists from Gitmo. We have the president releasing 5 Gitmo terrorists, top-notch Taliban, for a traitor called Bergdahl. And does the king of Jordan do that? No. He wants his pilot. He didn't know his pilot was killed. He was ready to release that woman, and he realized that they finally have burned his pilot. So he hung the woman, and he hung another guy, Karbuli. And there's more coming, he announces to ISIS. But then he releases al-Maqdisi, who is the second in charge under Zarqawi, because ISIS, we have to understand, ISIS was founded by Abu Mus'ab al-Zarqawi. His colleague was al-Maqdisi. So he threw al-Maqdisi in the slammer, and then al-Maqdisi says, okay, I don't want to face the noose. I condemn ISIS. And he tried to negotiate, and he called ISIS liars, and he just basically defanged ISIS's reputation in Jordan. And he did a political war that is very, very good in Jordan. And we need to be carrying out the same thing, but that's not what Obama's doing. He's releasing Muslim terrorists. In fact, he released Sami al-Aryan, another terrorist professor in Florida, Palestinian. Sami al-Aryan was convicted as a terrorist. And now he's gone. Where? Where is he sending him? To Turkey. What? Turkey is a banishment island? Turkey is a haven for Islamists. So there's Obama releasing another terrorist to Turkey. What's that all about? Obama's mindset is supporting the radical agenda.
Walid, Barack Obama is not a naive, incompetent liberal like many Republican leaders will try to explain his administration. In my view, Barack Obama's actions are evil, wicked, and satanic. Mm-hmm. I mean, let's call it what it is. He's satanic. He's wicked. Right. He's evil.
Right.
But why are the eyes of the people blinded to what is so obvious?
Well, I've been trying to answer that question for a while. It's very difficult for me, because to answer that question is really, I have to understand more of the Western American mindset. I come from the Middle East. I'm trying to adapt in the West still, but I haven't really completely adapted because my mind is still set being more of an Eastern. And to understand that I begin to understand that in America, we develop taboos. In America today, nothing is a taboo except the truth. It's not a taboo to come out of the closet and declare you're homosexual. This doesn't make any sense. Why would somebody be so proud to be homosexual if they're homosexual? It's not something to be proud about. If we really dissect the act of homosexuality to its bare minimum, it's something that is very disgusting. But this is the nature of things, that we untaboo taboos, and we taboo what needs to be known. So the moment you say birth certificate, assume he was born in Hawaii, assume he was born in Kogelo. Why is it a taboo to ask? Why is it a taboo to ask if President been a closet Muslim? We could ask if Obama was a closet Hindu, Shinto, Buddhist, Mormon, New Ager. No problem. Nobody would do anything. But you say, I think maybe Obama is Muslim, and everybody will hunt you down. And so why is it a sin and a taboo to ask if the president upholds a peace-loving religion? After all, it's a taboo to say Islam is violent. We have to say it's a peace-loving religion. So if it is a peace-loving religion, why can't we ask if somebody adheres to the peace-loving religion? So it's a taboo to say Islam is violent. And it's a taboo, we have to say Islam is peaceful, but it's also taboo to accuse the president of adhering to the peace-loving religion. Now, that's very much a contradiction, an oxymoron, and a very confusing way of thinking. It reminds me of the BBC. It reminds me of the British broadcast. And when I interview with them and how slick willies they are and how horrible they try to always accuse a person and hint, and they're very sophists in their... And it's the issue. I've learned so much sophism in America, you know. We've become a sophistic society when everything is wiped out and washed away with sophist statements. You know, I was watching the BBC just yesterday interviewing Bashar al-Assad. They asked him the question, you know, how do you answer that now 250,000 people were killed in Syria as a result of this war? In other words, you know, Bashar, it's your fault why 250,000 people died in Syria. It's not the fault of Obama, who started this Arab Spring. Who started the Arab Spring killed 250,000 people. That's how I view it. That's the truth. But that's not how the sophist mentality of the West does it. He asks him, how do you answer that now your country is in chaos and 250,000 people were killed, as if it was his fault? It's amazing to me. How could it be his fault when he's defending his country from collapse to ISIS mentality, the Free Syrian Army? And the same goes for McCain. And had we elected McCain, you think we would not have a problem? McCain is a major problem, too, because he is the one that wants to fund the FSA. He's even more flamboyant than Obama in funding the FSA. He's always on TV and radio, well, must fund the FSA. Why fund the FSA? In La Victoria Salsa, the way I see it, the FSA is hot. Not extra hot as ISIS maybe, but it's still hot. And when we look at the situation on the ground, the extra hot has always been able to defeat the hot and the mild and have them join the extra hot. This is why they're joining ISIS galore all the way to subcontinent of Asia, India, you name it, Ansar Bayt al-Maqdis in the Sinai Peninsula, in the Caucasus. Even Hamas is having factions right now. Some of them want to join ISIS. So ISIS is gaining momentum. We're not defeating ISIS. We're building ISIS. And Obama knows that if you do these campaigns of bombing on ISIS, it's simply going to recruit more ISIS. In fact, the report just yesterday I read, 20,000 more joined ISIS. You're not going to finish this agenda by doing what you're doing, you know, and it continues. Unfortunately, it continues, and the American people don't understand the big picture here. And the big picture is much bigger than we think. It's not just ISIS. Even if you remove ISIS, what takes place is a major issue. Because if you look at ISIS' problem right now, ISIS does not gain the momentum from what we call the ulama, the Muslim scholarly realm. In other words, the Muslim scholars really control the masses of the Muslim world entirely. I'm talking about the Sunni Muslim world, not the Shia in this case. Who runs that? The Union for Muslim Scholars. Who's the boss? Well, that's Sheikh Yusuf al-Qaradawi, the spiritual head of the Muslim Brotherhood. He condemns ISIS, by the way. He says ISIS is not the true caliphate. The true caliphate must be in Istanbul, Turkey. Well, we look at Obama. What does he support? Istanbul, Turkey. He supports Turkey. Obama doesn't care much about defeating ISIS. ISIS could be defeated by Turkey in the future, by whoever who wants to take over ISIS, either include it in the big spectrum as playing the bad cops, while Turkey and the Muslim Brotherhood plays the good cops. In fact, the Obama administration just allowed the invitation of the Muslim Brotherhood just last week. What are we doing with the Muslim Brotherhood? We're in bed with the Muslim Brotherhood. It's obvious. No one can deny that the Obama administration is currently in bed with the Muslim Brotherhood, because that is the key victory to the revival of the Grand Caliphate. The Grand Caliphate comes from Istanbul. That's where Islam was bruised. That's where the Ottoman Empire was crushed in the early 1900s. And that's where Erdogan of Turkey wants to become sultan. And that's why he wants the ousting of Bashar al-Assad. He wants the ousting of Bashar al-Assad the same way President Obama wants the ousting of Bashar al-Assad, because Erdogan believes he is Salim the First. He is a reincarnation of Salim the First. So he builds thousands of mosques, and he wants to invade Syria. He wants to enter into Egypt. So he starts the media mechanism for the Muslim Brotherhood. They know that the media is powerful. They have Rabi'a, the four-fingered thing, that if you just put the four-finger Rabi'a and you see Erdogan lifting his four fingers and Islam is lifting their four fingers, Rabi'a means four. It's the name of a woman, icon of Islam, in which there was a demonstrations in Egypt that was basically initiated a revolt against Sisi, Rabi'a al-Adawiyya in Egypt. And then, that's why they have TV stations to promote the Muslim Brotherhood, to bring back the Muslim Brotherhood agenda back into Egypt, to defeat Sisi. And this is why Sisi is key, and this is why Egypt is key. In fact, Rick, the Bible says Egypt is key. Christ, we think he comes to Jerusalem, but we forget that he also comes into Egypt. Isaiah chapter 19, God is very much interested in Egypt. He is interested in Jerusalem, but he's also interested in Christendom. We keep forgetting that they call for the Lord to send them a Savior, and God will send them a Savior and a mighty one, Isaiah 19. Who is that? Who is the mighty one that will enter into Egypt? Right there in first verse. The Lord comes riding in a swift cloud and is coming into Egypt. He's coming to fight for the Christians in Egypt, because Egypt is being bombarded by an enemy called the Antichrist, Daniel chapter 11. He goes into Egypt, and the Egypt will accept him. The Egyptian Muslims will accept him in submission. He goes into Libya, into North Africa. He goes into Somalia, Kush, Egypt, Fut, and Kush, Daniel 11. It's exactly the focus of Erdogan of Turkey. It's exactly the focus of allowing Islamism to take over in Tunisia. In the Arab Spring, Tunisia is in North Africa. We were against Zayn al-Abidin. Do you know anything about Zayn al-Abidin? I think not. So how many Americans know anything about Zayn al-Abidin of Tunisia, to oust Zayn al-Abidin and to replace him with An-Nahda, which is an Islamist Muslim Brotherhood party, supported by President Obama, of course. And so his brother works in Sudan. Malik Obama works in Sudan under Omar al-Bashir, a wanted terrorist by State Department rules. That man should be in jail. Malik Obama. His boss is Sawar Dahab. He works very closely with his brother. He's part of that revolution. Sisi gets on television and he says, Sudan is our enemy. The Muslim Brotherhood of Sudan and the Muslim Brotherhood in Turkey and the Sinai Peninsula, the Jerusalem Brigade, whatever you call it there, that's been supported by ISIS and the Muslim Brotherhood. Those are who are hurting us. So there is an agenda from Sudan against Egypt. There is an agenda from Turkey. So Egypt arrests and throws in the slammer Al Jazeera reporter. The New York Times writes to defend him. So you have a liberal mechanism, a media that's backing Obama, that's backing Muslim Brotherhood policies as well. We say for the freedom of speech, this journalist, Muhammad Fahmy, should be released. Excuse me, Al Jazeera television has been supported by who? Qatar. Qatar is the icon of the Muslim Brotherhood. It is the dynamo that financially supports the Muslim Brotherhood and puts Al Jazeera television in Egypt. There's a branch, Arabic Al Jazeera, which foments the violence in Egypt. That's what it does. So they throw these people on the slammer and we say, freedom of the press. The freedom of the press. Well, Egypt is trying to live and survive a situation in which its destiny is at stake. Its entire country is at stake. When our existence against Nazi Germany was at stake when we were fighting the Nazis, we executed Hitler Youth. When they said the word Hitler, we shot them immediately. We emptied the world from Nazism in order to have a Western existence. So if Egypt is fighting for its existence as a secular country, as a secular nation void of Muslim fundamentalism and Muslim brotherhood, what are we doing? We are fighting Egypt through our media, through the State Department, through Turkey. The whole world is anti-Assisi. So Assisi flees and goes to Russia. So now we lost an ally. A major ally, the most powerful country in the Middle East.
And Egypt and Russia this week signed an agreement to drop the use of the U.S. dollar in their bilateral trades.
There you go.
So another nation has said goodbye to the U.S. dollar. At some point, there will be a tipping point where there will be more nations not using the dollar than using the dollar. Walid, are you aware of David Axelrod's involvement in the Nigerian presidential election?
Not that much, no.
All right. Axelrod was Obama's campaign manager in 2008.
Yeah, I think I know who Axelrod is, but he looks like more a professional.
Yeah, he looks like he's Adolf Hitler's son. I mean, he really does resemble physically. He resembles Adolf Hitler. He's got a political consulting firm in Chicago, of course, and it's called AKPD. That's the consulting firm of Obama's former campaign manager, David Axelrod. Well, this political consulting firm has been deeply involved in the presidential campaign of Nigerian retired General Muhammadu Buhari, who is a Sunni Muslim and is deeply connected to Boko Haram. There's another one for you to dig into. So you've got the Obama-Nista political machine meddling in the presidential election of Nigeria. And of course, the president of Nigeria is a devout Christian, Goodluck Jonathan. And so the Obama-Nistas are in Nigeria to defeat the Christian president and install a Sunni Muslim who then will deliver the Christians into the hands of the jihadists.
Bingo. In fact, when it comes to Sudan, North Sudan, South Sudan, you see, you have South Sudan, which is Christian, and you have the Muslim Sudan. And when the Christian Sudan, because they don't have an air force, they're being attacked continuously, the Nubian being very persecuted, and all kinds of persecutions happening from the Muslims, in which you had the South Sudan wanted to fight and combat the Muslims. And Obama went personally and spoke to the president of Sudan and told him to refrain from defending himself. Obama personally went there. And he spoke with, I forgot his name. I'm having a senior moment, but he literally twisted the arm of the Christian Sudan not to fight and not to defend itself. And this is against an onslaught from Islamic fundamentalists. So,
hey, not only is he twisting the arms of the Christian president of Sudan, don't defend yourself, but what about this outrageous thing the State Department did yesterday in Yemen? They ordered the U.S. Marines to surrender their weapons prior to their evacuation of the embassy. Our Marines had to evacuate with no firearms on orders from the U.S. State Department.
Well, what does that bode for?
Whose side is this man on? He's not our president. He's not our commander-in-chief. He's not our person. When will this country realize that there is an enemy in the White House? And when will the U.S. military and the U.S. intelligence agencies, and when will the FBI get out of their denial and deal with reality. An enemy of the Constitutional Republic of the United States of America is in the White House.
The question is very difficult to answer. It's 2 more years of this stuff. I mean, that's just, but again, America somehow learns from chaoses. We had to be attacked in Pearl Harbor to wake up that Japan is a grand enemy, and we fought it and we defeated it. Same with Nazi Germany. And so it takes, and then people ask me that question all the time, what does it take for America to wake up? And my answer, unfortunately, is something I don't like to say, and that is high death toll. The higher death toll, the faster we will wake up. And that's how it is.
A major a crisis that is life-threatening to the nation.
Mm-hmm.
And this brings me back to the topic of the fourth turning. And if you've never read the book, I suggest you read The Fourth Turning. And I interviewed one of the surviving co-authors, Neil Howe, and The Fourth Turning was written in the 90s. These guys were sociologists, and they studied U.S. and the history of Great Britain and the United States for 500 years, and they saw these cycles that operate in about 80-some years, and there are 4 turnings in each 80-year cycle. And the amazing thing is that each generation, 20-some year, they divided it up, like 20-plus years in each of these cycles. They repeated the same behavior, the same mindset, the same attitudes over 500 years.
Correct.
And so we're in the fourth turning, and the fourth turning is the most dangerous phase of this 80-plus year cycle. And somewhere in the fourth turning, there will arise a crisis. Now, the last time we were in a fourth turning happened to be Pearl Harbor. So I'm bringing that up, Walid, because historically we are in the cycle, and we're in the stage of the cycle that says there's going to be a crisis that will threaten the very existence and survival of the nation. And Mr. Howe, when I interviewed him some years ago, he said each crisis stage gets more dangerous. It gets worse over the hundreds of years that he studied. And he said there is no guarantee that we will survive the next crisis. So there is a mega Pearl Harbor coming. And we're literally in that stage. It could happen today. We're in that window of when this crisis is going to happen. And it's not, it's not written in stone it's going to happen, but it would be, if it doesn't happen, it would be an anomaly over 500 years of history. So I'm not going to bet on that. I'm going to hedge my bets that, hey, this crisis is coming very soon, and it's going to threaten our existence as a people.
Well, it's a very good argument you make, because I asked myself the question, what was the purpose of Christ's coming? I mean, if the church can defend itself, there's no need for Christ to come. The church can defend itself. Even if the church goes through crisis, no need. But it's the existence of Israel as a nation will completely be wiped out. And the church itself, when I read John, he says, and I saw a beast. What's a beast? It's a threat. A threat to who? To the church's existence. To either Israel, which is really the roots, or to the branches, which is the church. And so it's a threat. And that threat that John talks about commences the coming of Christ. In other words, if Christ doesn't come, this scenario will completely wipe out the church and the faithful and everything else. And Christ is pretty clear in Scripture. He comes to defend the church. He comes to defend Israel. He comes for Jerusalem. He'll come as a crusading warrior. We don't like the word crusade because we think crusade is just going preaching the gospel. Yes, sure it is, but the crusade is also a war in a battlefield. And Christ comes as a warring figure here to defend the church. Well, why? It was because in such crisis, just like you say, is that if Christ doesn't intervene, the whole world will be destroyed. We take a look at Pakistan. We worry about Iran, and in fact, we're giving the green light for Iran. Now it's defending against ISIS, another tactic. ISIS is crucial for Obama. ISIS is crucial for Erdogan. It's crucial for Japan. It's crucial. You know, you have many scenarios happening here in the world that are so dangerous. You have Shinzo Abe of Japan. He wants to bring back Imperial Japan. And unfortunately, when you try to tell Americans about Imperial Japan, unless it's a grandpa who fought Japan, who knows the ruthlessness of the Japanese and how they massacred the Chinese, we're focused on the Chinese so much. You know, and so you have in Japan, they use ISIS. They have two hostages, Japanese hostages. They were sold out by the Japanese government. Why would the Japanese, Shinzo Abe, condemn ISIS from Israel with Israeli flag behind him, knowing that he has a hostage on purpose? He wants that hostage to die. Why? Because he wants to go back to the Japanese government. In fact, I wrote about it before it happened. I says, watch, Shinzo Abe is not going to do anything about getting this hostage back, and this hostage will be killed and will be beheaded. Both of the Japanese will be beheaded, and then he will go back to his parliament and he will say, I want to get rid of what the U.S. did. And what did the U.S. do? You're not allowed to have wars, military training, and all these things.
You're absolutely right, because they're now talking about amending the Japanese constitution that was put in place after World War II.
Bingo. So ISIS is crucial to exist. Now, ISIS is crucial for Iran. Why isn't Iran destroying ISIS? They could go in a couple of weeks, destroy ISIS. Why they're not doing it? Because to Iran, it's an argument. They're part of the coalition unofficially fighting against ISIS. So now, the more we prolong ISIS, the more time Iran has to advance its nuclear capability. While we worry about Iran's nuclear capability, we're ignoring the major capability of Pakistan. Pakistan has a government that is very ISIS mentality. 90% of Pakistanis, it's much worse than Iraq and in Syria. In Syria, you have a mixed multitude of people. You have Kurds, you have Shia, you have Sunni, you have Christians, you have a multitude of secular societies in Syria. But in Pakistan, it's 100% Muslim. Actually not, because there is still, a small percentage of Christians, which we're trying to rescue there. But in Pakistan, you can say 90% of Pakistanis have no problem with ISIS's beheadings and this kind of violence that they do. And they have 100 nukes. And ISIS is camped in Pakistan. They're interfering in Pakistan. They're part of the government of Pakistan. There's many pro-ISIS in the government of Pakistan. In fact, people should read my report. I wrote a report on Pakistan called ISIS Will Take Over the Most Dangerous Muslim Nation on Earth. And that is Pakistan. Pakistan is more dangerous than ISIS. Pakistan is more dangerous than Iran with its nuclear ability. They can give Turkey nukes if they want. In fact, they leaked nuclear information with North Korea, South Korea. I'm having a senior moment, but Musharraf was on the forefront of leaking nuclear information. So we have a major country called Pakistan, and it's supposed to be an ally of the United States? I don't get it. I mean, it's supposed to be an enemy of the U.S. We're supposed to be declaring war on Pakistan right now, taking the nukes. What, is Obama going to take the 100 nukes and put them in his backyard? Ain't going to happen. He wants them to have nukes. He wants Iran to have nukes. He's looking the other way about Iran's nukes. So we have an Islamic revolution coming from two parts. You have the Shia crescent, in which we see it happening in front of our eyes. Yemen had a Houthi revolution in which the Shiites are taking over the government. This is more of Iranians' expansion. This is more of what Daniel said as a repeat of the bear, Medo-Persia. That's Persia, Iran, expanding its sphere of influence into Yemen, into Bahrain, into Syria, into Lebanon, into Iraq. Who calls the shots in Iraq? It is an imam there who is a Shia imam. He's the one that calls the shots, not the puppet. He's the one that declares war here and there. And so its sphere of influence is expanding. That's one part of the puzzle, the Shia crescent. Then you have the Sunni crescent stemming from Turkey. Turkey is taking over Afghanistan. We pulled out of Afghanistan. Who is running the show militarily in Afghanistan today? Turkey. Look it up. Americans don't look up these things. But it's taken over in Afghanistan's military apparatus, training, and you name it. It's parked as a NATO alliance. NATO, Turkey isn't part of NATO. And so you have, a NATO alliance is in Afghanistan. That's not a problem, but it's Turkey. It's an Islamist. Erdogan greets the Prime Minister of Palestine, Abu Mazen, and with what? With a facade of Ottoman soldiers from every dynasty of the Ottoman Empire on a staircase of his castle that he built, declaring himself some sort of a sultan for the Muslim world. And he's solving the problems in the Muslim world. And he invokes an idea called the Turkish model of Islam, which is palatable to the West, palatable to the peaceful so-called Muslims. And Turkey is Sufi Muslim. We say Sufi Muslim, that's peaceful Muslims. No. Sufi Islam is not peaceful Muslims. Sufi Islam is the Ottoman Empire. Sufi Islam gave the strength to the most powerful Islamic empire in history that killed more Christians than any other time in history. Because we don't look at that history. We repeat the very history you were talking about. Because you said that in every, so many generations, this is going to happen. And that's exactly what's happening. We have an American generation that is completely oblivious to history. And this is a problem, especially in the evangelical circles as well. They're oblivious to history. When they think of the Crusader, they think of Obama's version of the Crusades, and they support it. We need to think of the Crusaders also came to respond to an onslaught from the Muslims who came and didn't allow Christians to visit Jerusalem. Christians loved Jerusalem, just as we love Jerusalem. And so we ignore all of these things, that the Crusades came as a defensive mechanism after 100 years of Muslim onslaught. It was 100 years of Muslim persecution until the Pope of Rome decided, enough is enough. And then the French and English and everybody else, and you have Richard the Lionheart, decided to come and fight it. Yes, there was Abu Ghraib by the Crusades. It happens. We have our own Abu Ghraib. But does that mean the American military is evil? It doesn't mean that. It means they made mistakes, yes. In fact, as Christendom does best, it confesses its mistakes. You know very well, as anybody else knows, that we confess our sins when it comes to history. The question is, are we twisting the arm of the Muslim to confess his sins?
All right.
No.
Walid, I've got 2 minutes. I'm going to ask one question. This goes back to the beginning of this interview when we were talking about why the eyes of the people are blinded to what's going on. To me, this wave of Islamic infiltration worldwide, it's so bizarre. It's so incomprehensible that Westerners are allowing it to happen, that I can only come up with two options. Number one, the powerful, wealthy people, the men and women who rule the world from the shadows, whatever you want to call them, all right, they are secretly Islamic. Or option two, those powerful, wealthy people in the shadows are using Islam to devour nations and create chaos because the shadow rulers have a diabolical plan that needs chaos in order to destroy the existing world order. Which one is it?
I would take number two. Whoever the powers to be are using, an evil king will take advantage of every evil situation. And so they begin to advance those evil situations. What about option three? What about the body? Is it perhaps that a disease can enter the body only when the body is weak? The problem is the church as well as a whole, whether Catholic, evangelical, both sides, Protestant and evangelical, both are falling away, as we've been told in the Bible. And so we have become such a diseased society in which it's plagued with homosexual agenda. It's plagued with all these reprobate minds that we deal with every day. It's diseased. And so when there's a disease, that's when the germ enters. If the body, we have to go back to Christ's advice. It is really the leaven. If we allow the leaven to enter, it's going to increase and destroy the batch as a whole. I think that's the problem. The problem is the church. The church, what is the church doing? I mean, where are the demonstrations in front of the White House? Who is calling out the persecution of their brethren overseas? Who? Who's leading this? Where is the church? I thought America was the beacon of Christianity. Where is this beacon? I came from the Middle East. I converted. I was ex-Muslim terrorist. I came and joined you. And when I joined you, not you personally, the church that is, what did I find? I find a society that wants to get filled with their personal agenda. They want to be filled with their personal needs. As they forgot that what the Bible says, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. God loved earth, humanity, the whole globe. We're not thinking about the whole globe. We're thinking about only our individual self. And that's the problem. The gospel is changing by the day and evolving by the day. Taking the Bible and eliminating chapters and verses by the day to minimize it to 4 spiritual laws in a booklet and a hoopla on Sunday with a discotheque kind of background and cafe latte and all these things. And we forgot the purpose of the church, and that is to fight evil. God sent his Son to destroy the works of the devil. That's the key. And how do we destroy the works of the devil? If we are not active in our culture and not active in our government and not active in politics. Yes, Christianity is very political. Yes, it does have an agenda in which Christ said if you have faith of a mustard seed, you can move the mountains. The kingdoms will change as a result. The governments will change as a result of your faith. We have lost our faith. And that's the problem. The root problem is us as well.
That's going to be the final word for today. Walid Shoebat, and his website is shoebat.com. Walid, you keep telling the truth. You just keep doing what you're doing, and more and more people are going to wake up. More and more Christians are going to wake up and realize that what they have been told for the last 20 years as Christianity is false, and there's going to be a return back to original apostolic early Christianity. I believe it with all my heart. God is raising up that original church, and it's going to shine brightly in the last days. Walid Shoebat, thank you, my friend.
You bet. God bless.
All right, that's it for today's program. Hey, a couple matters I want to say to you just before we close. Number one, pray for my wife, Susan. She's still recovering from the autoimmune disorder that hit her in late 2013. And this week she's had a setback. I think she's overexerting herself, and she's not feeling well today. She's been in a lot of pain and discomfort today. So just pray for Susan. Also, continue to pray for my daughter, Carissa Washburn, in Ecuador. I have deliberately not said anything about the situation there, but I will tell you God is moving in that situation. So continue to pray for Bless an Orphan, that they will have victory and get those little kids back into that facility. All right, see you tomorrow.